My name is Ruby Jennings, and these are my colleagues, Stephen Chung, Tim Rodriguez, Matt Santa Cruz, and we're really pleased to have the opportunity to present to you today. So quickly, I wanted to take you through the background which we went through. We're recognizing the Federal Rail Commission's primary objectives, which are safety, efficiency, and security. In addition, our objective for this proposal is to create a decision support system to help the FRC in evaluating funds. So quickly, I wanted to take you through the process which we use to create our decision support system, and the rest of my team will then take you through the decision support system which we created. So we began by conducting some background research on the project and some of the past barriers in other countries. In addition, we identified some of our key stakeholders, but also the many barriers that project implementation could face. Finally, we identified 4 overarching criteria which to put our decision support system on. And then from there, we created key metrics with which to measure the 4 criteria. And then we designed a rubric with which to score applications based on these metrics. So as you know, our stakeholders are the United States Congress, state and local governments, environmental groups, and American taxpayers. So we recognized a few barriers right up front, and we identified these barriers, and then we attempted to address them in our rubric and our decision support system. So one barrier might be opposition from civic groups and lobbyists. Additionally, barriers might be we wanted to ensure that this project had long-term political support for high-speed rail. In addition, we were concerned about some uncertainty in ridership, and we were also concerned about uncertain financial pressures on states. And then in terms of operational barriers, we were concerned about land rights issues. And then we also wanted to be able to hold actors besides the FRC accountable so that we could ensure project success. So now I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to take you through our 4 main evaluation criteria.
Great, thank you. Good morning. I'm Matt Santa Cruz. As Ruby mentioned, we did have over here. We identified sort of 4 broad overarching criteria within which to create this framework that we sort of mapped out, and it's actually in front of you on the handouts in a little bit more fine-grained detail. It's too much to get into in the PowerPoint, but just refer to that throughout if you are looking for a little bit more detail. The 4 main sort of buckets that we grouped our evaluation criteria into are the following. One is economic impact. It's pretty clear that the mission of the U.S. Congress and certainly the executive branch of the United States government, which you're a part of, is to use these funds to create jobs and to stimulate economic growth. We held that in pretty high regard throughout the process. Secondly, we're interested in placing a pretty high degree of importance on the financial sort of short and long run sustainability and viability of whatever the proposed project is. So that sort of shows up in the second piece of this, the financial feasibility piece. We're really interested in sort of soliciting and utilizing input from political and community actors wherever the proposed project is. So you'll see that in the third piece of this. And finally, we really want to make sure that this thing hits the ground running. And as a result, project execution and infrastructure expansion, both to get the project started and to make sure it lasts, was important to us. So we're going to move through each of these in a little bit more detail, just sort of walking through what our assumptions and justifications were for each of the 4 broad categories, and then talking through what our key metrics were within each of those. So to start off with, as I mentioned, economic impact analysis is going to be really important in our proposed criteria rubric. We're really interested in remaining faithful to the notion that the primary objective of this stimulus project is to spur economic activity and create jobs in the long run. So within this, we're looking at what the proposed or projected employment impact of the project is, what the projected impact on overall economic activity, both locally and in a regional sense. And then we're also looking specifically at what the proposed or projected impact on the transportation market is going to be when this high-speed rail project gets off the ground, whatever the proposed project is. So again, just one more level of detail, and again, this is all in the rubric, which is on the back side of the sheet that I gave to you guys. We're looking at the jobs created, both the number of them and the sort of qualitative nature of these jobs. Are they in manufacturing? Are they in construction? how long are these jobs going to last. So it's a little bit more of a multidimensional analysis of this jobs question. We're obviously interested in the sort of net increase in projected economic activity, both in the immediate vicinity of the proposed high-speed rail project, but we're also interested to see some of the multiplier effects that might spread throughout a region. And then again, we're really interested to see what sort of is projected to occur in the transportation market, specifically what percentage of existing air and highway travel market shares this high-speed rail project is projected to sort of capture, is the way we're thinking about it. And then secondly, the financial feasibility piece of this is really important to us, and we think it should be really important to you as the FRC. Ultimately, we are looking for an application that puts forth a robust and sustainable plan to raise matching funds and to spend the grant funds that you all have put out there in a sort of transparent and ultimately effective way. So our key metrics here were adequacy, is there enough money? Sustainability, is the money going to be there into the future? And then transparency and accountability, is the money going to be spent in a way that makes sense, in a way that we can sort of discern? So our key metrics here, adequacy, we're interested to know what % of the proposed matching funds or the FRC funds has the applicant secured in advance, and sort of what does that look like? And as part of this, we're looking for really detailed capital and operating budgets, both of which include a sensitivity analysis that lay out the impact on the bottom line numbers of proposed sort of exogenous factors like changes in ridership, changes in economic conditions, et cetera, because that's important and it's inevitable. Secondly, we're really placing a high priority on trying to wall off this money from the sort of up and down nature, certainly of the stock market, of political systems, and ultimately of the sort of fickle nature of state legislatures. And so we're really hoping to see in the proposed application a diversity of funding streams that includes state bond money, state operating money, and private funds as well. And then lastly, the transparency and accountability piece. We're hoping to see a plan put forth for a competitive bidding process, a competitive procurement process, and a regular reporting sort of mechanism in place, both to FRC to make sure that everybody's in the loop, and also ultimately to the American public. We feel there's a lot of money that's going to be out there. We want to make sure that everybody knows what's being done with it.
And I'll talk about the political and community support, and then the fourth criterion, which is project execution and infrastructure. For political and community support, our assumption here is that the plan should be informed by and responsive to local, state, and regional priorities. And we also are assuming that there will be some level of political opposition. So our criteria, our key metrics here under political and community support try to evaluate the proposal based on overcoming some of those barriers. So that would include political support, environmental impact, like an assessment, and logistical authorities, particularly legal authority over land issues, land rights. So for political support, what we're looking for is we don't want to let it hinge on one political leader. We would like to see some variety of political support among state, local, and state congressional leaders. As well, we would like to see in a plan or something that's already happened about getting local jurisdictions to declare formal declarations of support for high-speed rail project. And we can see some of those issues, like in the Keystone XL pipeline and hydrofracking in New York State, about some local jurisdictions being kind of getting in the way of pushing forward a proposal. So we do want to see that. Environmental impact, we would need to see a favorable environmental impact assessment. For one, we would like to see avoid environmental sensitive areas, or if it's kind of inevitable or unavoidable, how they're going to deal with those sensitive areas. And we would also like to see a detailed projected CO2 reduction as in comparison to an increase of air and highway travel, and what high-speed rail would do to reduce CO2 emissions. Logistical authority, like I said, the legal authority about acquiring the land for the proposed route, and how that's going to play out, how they're going to gain that legal authority, or does it already exist using eminent domain, for example. And also make an effort to connect high-speed rail to existing mass and urban transit systems, which would also link back to political support for a high-speed rail system. And for our fourth and last overarching criterion is project execution infrastructure. Our assumption is that the Congress is giving the stimulus money. They want to spend fairly quickly. So we want to see a project that aims to break ground in 3 years and then aims for completion by 2020. Our key metrics here actually includes the 3 primary objectives of FRC, which is safety and security and efficiency, but also we want to see project execution and infrastructure, how they're going to gain that infrastructure and build it. Safety and security, we would like to see a plan to avoid crashes using modern technology that currently exists in Europe and Asia. That can include signaling technologies, as well as, like in France, for example, they slow down their train cars without relying on drivers if a train is too close to another. We also like to see if a crash does occur, what's the safety of the passengers on board through crash test data analysis. Project execution, we want to see a plan that has commitment to push through potential delays or overcome delays to accomplish completion by 2020, or at least shoot for it. And of course, break ground in 3 years, like I stated already. The efficiency aspect is extremely important. We would like to see how the proposed high-speed rail compares to that of air and highway travel and travel times in particular. Infrastructure, how are you going to gain the technology? How are you going to deal with increased power supply? Or how are you going to get that power for high-speed rail? And how are you going to upgrade existing stations and then build new stations that are needed for high-speed rail? We also took into consideration the need to have a natural disaster preparedness plan, as well as dealing with climate effects, such as potential areas that may, in the long term, have sea level rise or flooding or be affected by storms. And lastly, Stephen will go over the rubric that's set in front of you, a little bit how that scoring system, explain the scoring system a little bit and how we thought of it.
Are we doing on time, by the way?
We have 2:45.
Okay.
Right, thank you, Tim. So several things we haven't considered are who is going to do the scoring and how it's going to be scored. So as for who, we envision either experts from your staff or outside third-party experts hired by you would be doing the scoring for this, for all of these applicants. As for the scoring system itself, we see that we envision qualitative measures being scored from 0 to 4 by your experts, with 4 being a very, very strong plan in that particular indicator or metric, and 0 indicating a weak or non-existent plan for that particular metric. As for quantitative indicators, we envision each applicant being ranked from the best application down to the low, the worst application, and then the highest quartile would be given a 4. The second quartile will be given a 3, and so on. We believe that this would standardize everything so that all of the indicators are scored quantitatively and objectively. Second, each of the indicators would be weighed. So with our 4 broad categories, you can see that the economic impact analysis indicators are weighed the heaviest. The project execution and infrastructure indicators would be ranked second, and then on down to political feasibility and political and community support. This isn't to say that political and community support isn't important, but we feel that based on our analysis of your situation, the economic analysis and the economic impact is the most important. So each of the indicators has its own weight, and it's based on our analysis of the FRC's priorities and the current situation based on the materials you've given us. So in conclusion, the decision support system reflects the core values and the fundamental mission of the FRC, and it reflects the input of many key stakeholders, including the US Congress, state and local governments, environmental groups, and ultimately the American people. And we think this new system will help the FRC administer large-scale grant programs in a timely and objective manner. Any questions?
30 seconds to spare.
So I'll start this time. Is Deloitte prepared to assist us in evaluating these applications?
I think so, yes. If Deloitte, if the contract for doing the evaluation is awarded to Deloitte, then I suppose Deloitte could dig deeper into this and do the scoring.
Okay, so the rubric is a kind of snapshot of time you're going to evaluate the proposals as they come in. Have you given any thought to sort of more ongoing monitoring and monitoring of the money as it goes out and how to adjust that?
Yeah.
Brings back to
Yeah, so we gave a great deal of thought to this. I think that what we would ideally see in a successful application is a well thought out and well articulated plan to remain in contact with the grant, to sort of make and maintain contact between the grant maker, you all, and the grantee, whoever ends up receiving this money, and to sort of have a regular reporting process, and to use that in a sort of iterative way to adjust the priorities and to adjust maybe the weighting system or to add or subtract metrics as we see fit. But I think that certainly any application that we would deem successful would have the groundwork laid in advance to sort of have that dialogue down the road.
On the reverse side, under transparency and accountability on the financial feasibility aspect, we do include that as a regular reporting process and oversight process, clearly stated in there as well.
What's my biggest challenge if I move forward with this framework that you presented today?
I think I can take that. The biggest challenge would be kind of digging deeper into the qualitative metrics. So right now, the qualitative metrics would be scored from 4 to 0. So I think moving forward, if we were to choose to move forward with this metric, we would have to dig deeper into what's a 4 project, what's a 3 project, or in that particular indicator. And that
Pretty
would,
decisive in that. What's another challenge outside of just how you're scoring?
I mean, I think a challenge is going to be getting enough applications to really, I think, understand what the degrees of separation are between a project that's likely to be successful and a project that's not likely to be successful. I think that sort of soliciting many applications is really important. I think that this sort of marketplace of ideas concept applies here, and that the more ideas that are on the table, the more that the FRC is going to be able to make a really informed and sort of nuanced decision about where they want to put this money.
I'd also go back to our barriers, political support, financial feasibility, as 2 big issues moving forward, and how to go about actually kind of selling high-speed rail to the public and to leaders, and a plan that will actually do that, finding a plan that will do that.